legally speaking, as far as dues are concerned, they can file a lien against your property after you are late 30 days or more on your dues. And then they can start the foreclosure process after you're late 90 days past due.
Hi, it's MAUREEN MAHOOD, broker owner with Sell Your Home Charlotte here in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina with Josh LIPACK of Grabowski Law. And today we're going to talk about something that actually was in the news. NPR, right? Did a story about HOAs foreclosing, and they had a statistic. Josh, you listened to it before this morning. I listened to it last week. Do you remember what the statistic was on
I
it?
do. It's that HOAs have had 5,500 foreclosures in North Carolina since 2018, and 500 of those resulted in the homeowner losing their home.
Oh my gosh. So we're going to talk about what happens if you get, I like to call them love letters. Anytime somebody sends me you're breaking the rules letter, basically, or you don't. So there's a couple of ways, and Josh, you can go over this. If you don't pay your dues or you get a fine for something, let's talk about how that exactly works. So how do people end up in this position?
Legally speaking, as far as dues are concerned, they can file a lien against your property after you are late 30 days or more on your dues. And then they can start the foreclosure process after you're late 90 days past due. So that's for dues only. If it's a fine, if you've broken the rules, if they fine you for whatever reason, if you, like the example in the story was putting in windows that weren't approved. And if you get a fine like that, they can foreclose on you for not paying the fine. However, that would require an actual court order because there has to be due process there. But the dues don't require that. That just requires that they notify you that it's happening.
Okay, if you just decide one day that you're annoyed with your HOA, which I know you said that they said 80%, 89% of the people are happy with their HOA. I
What they said.
anecdotally have not found that true. Like most of the people I talk to, and of course I've never surveyed people, but most of them, not that they hate their HOA, but they might be annoyed with them for one reason or another. But so if you decide, okay, I'm not paying my dues, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Maybe you have a valid point. Like they're supposed to take care of the shrubbery and they aren't doing that. Or there's somebody down the street who's got a bunch of like violations and you're like, I'm not paying my dues until they decide to enforce those things. And so you're saying if I decide to do that in 30 days, they could decide to put a lien on my house.
Correct. And I get where you're going with that. For example, with landlord-tenant law, if your landlord has let the property fall into an uninhabitable condition and you've made them aware of that and they don't fix it, technically you can withhold rent and use that rent to say fix it yourself and then not pay them whatever it costs you out of pocket. That wouldn't work here, I don't believe. And HOAs are much more powerful. And yes, basically, if you don't pay your dues after 30 days, it seems like they have a pretty clear, unambiguous right to file a lien and then after 90 to foreclose. And that can be on any amount, as we learned in that video, in that interview. Maybe you're an HOA that only maintains like shrubbery, like you said at the entrance, and your dues aren't that high, but your dues may be, let's say $10 a month. If you're 90 days late, they can foreclose on your house over $10. And a lot of people don't realize that because they think only their mortgage companies can foreclose on them.
Yeah. That's pretty incredible. So when I'm helping people look for houses, there's a certain group of people who love an HOA neighborhood, but I will take people through if they're looking at HOAs, especially if they have things like, if they are, like we talked about this earlier, if they own a small business and let's say they're a plumber and they have trucks, sometimes in those rules and regs, it says you can't park your truck in your driveway and they can fine you on that. Or the interview said the lady got permission to change her windows and did it the way that they said to do it. And then the HOA decided after that she did it the wrong way and they were going to make her change all the windows again. And so that's where you say, okay, they can't really foreclose on you at that point, but because they have to go through due process first.
In that scenario, yes.
Yeah. So what's your advice? That's a loaded question.
Actually, no, it's pretty straightforward. It's if you're buying in an HOA, because theoretically there's nothing wrong with them, especially if the upside is something that appeals to you.
Yeah.
But it's important anytime you buy into these communities that you're reading these CCRs,
Yeah.
that you understand what your obligations are. And also, that you're checking your mail. My generation, especially, and we don't check our mail. Everything that I have is paperless. And one
Mhm.
time I actually did miss a payment on something for 3 months because I didn't check my mail and I never thought about it. And that's where you see a lot of these becoming an issue with the HOA foreclosures they were talking about, is because people don't check their mail, or it was during COVID and they weren't getting these notifications of foreclosure. But it's important that you're my age or younger, that you still have to check your mail.
Put it on a reminder somewhere too. Because also it could be like you pay it monthly. Because that's the one thing that we don't add. You don't escrow HOA stuff like you would do insurance and you would do taxes. So sometimes I think you pay monthly, but some of them that are smaller, you would pay annually. And a lot of these companies have online portals where you can just go in and pay online. And I don't know. I guess they're required to send you a bill.
Actually, even that's something to be aware of, because I previously was in an HOA community and I had it set up on auto pay, so I didn't have to think about it, just like everything else that I have. And then they upped the dues by $5 maybe one year. And because of that, my auto pay stopped. And again, until I checked my mail, I wasn't aware that my auto pay had stopped. And then I needed to readjust it and approve the new amount. So it's always important to be aware of those things.
And I guess are they, and maybe this is like a case by case, but and you might not know the answer to this, but if they do change something, you have to have a vote in the neighborhood for it. But are they required to just send mail to everybody, or what is the
Yeah.
requirement?
The requirement is mail. And actually, I believe that was one of the legislative goals they talked about in the interview, was that they want to have it where HOAs are required to obtain other forms of communication for their homeowners, and to send them emails or text alerts so that people are more likely to get this information in a timely manner.
Yeah. And I think also, I don't know if you've ever gone through this. So like I've actually had some people who not paid some of their stuff and they're selling. And at the end, those things don't go away. You have to pay that with the proceeds of your sale. So it's like it's a lien. So it's not like if you move, you can't transfer that property without paying. They're like the government. I get their money.
We treat HOA assessments like taxes at closing. In every closing where there is an HOA, we have to order a disclosure from the management company that shows us a current accounting for that property, what's still due, if there's anything still due, or what needs to be prorated if it's paid in full, and then any additional fees that they collect upon the transfer of the property.
And I think in our new contracts, as of last year, the assessment, there's a line in there, correct me if I'm wrong, that says that the seller is required to pay any special assessments at close unless you take care of it some other way. So if
Correct.
there's a surprise special assessment seller, like you didn't disclose it, then you're paying it out of your proceeds.
Correct. In full. And because those are considered levied once they're set at the onset, even though you can pay it monthly as the seller. But
Mm.
if you sell and there's still anything due on it, you owe the remaining amount. The buyer's not responsible for that. And in fact, when I bought my condo, my first place, we ordered an HOA disclosure and they forgot to put on there that there were special assessments due. So it was never charged from the seller at closing. They tried to bill it to me. I showed them the disclosure that we were sent. They ended up having to eat the cost. I wasn't going to pay it. It was, I think, $2,000.
Wow. So the HOA forgot to put it on their disclosure. Seller forgot to disclose it to you.
I don't think the
Sure.
seller acted in bad faith. I don't think they
Yeah.
understood how that worked necessarily. And we ultimately relied on the information that the HOA provided.
Gotcha. Wow. If people have questions about HOA, I would really love for people in the comments. If they have questions, we'll monitor them and maybe Josh and I can do another video about HOAs and special assessments. There's a lot to know when it comes to them. And if you want to do that, the other thing is if you're in a neighborhood without an HOA and you have a neighborhood association, that's completely different. A lot of people get that mixed up. But if you have questions on that, put it in the description. Josh, you have anything else to add to this?
I'm sure maybe once we see some questions, but I'm good for now.
Yep. Okay. MAUREEN MAHOOD, broker owner of Sell Your Home Charlotte. Josh, tell them who you are.
I'm Josh Lippack with Grabowski Law in South Park, and we operate in North and South Carolina.
All right. Perfect. All right, everybody, have a great day. And thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe.